What's up, guys? Is Captain Daniel. So, there are going to be two very important decisions when it comes to dating, being confident, and attraction. Okay. It's kind of like when you say there's two most important decisions in your life, right? The day you were born and the day you realize why you were born. So, when you first start out learning this journey, you realize that this is a skill. It's not something you're born with, right? People find out that when you go in high school and you're bullied a lot, you realize that, wait, is there just certain people who are attractive and there's certain people who aren't? So this is where I realized this myself. And the first decision that's very important is knowing when to start. When you start, it sets the foundation for your identity. The moment you start this journey, it's where you realize where your identity is at and your emotional wiring when it comes to dating. So one of my students, actually a couple of my students, they start at a later age where let's say 40s or 50s. You realize that when you learn it that late, it's not too late to start, but you realize that you are starting at a place where you kind of already crafted and solidified your own identity. Your own brain neurons are connected. Most of your behavior when it comes to dating or attraction is kind of subconscious, right? It's a heuristic thinking where for survival, if you feel like, oh man, you got rejected your whole life. So for survival, you're going to not be able to go talk to that beautiful girl because you're already scared of rejection. This is why I had some clients who were a soldier and he said he was more scared about getting mortars thrown at him than approaching a girl sometimes, right? So when you start late, you kind of solidified certain instincts that help you survive. And it's going to take even longer time, I would say, to unlearn those habits. And I wouldn't say they're necessarily bad, but it's not conducive to attracting a girl when every time you want to talk to a girl, you're kind of scared about the worst thing happening because your example of your life is always getting rejected and you don't have evidence that you are an attractive guy. You get triggers like rejection or flaking or reactivating old emotional walls where you also start kind of becoming bitter towards women, right? So a big advice is, especially what I notice about my older clients when they get married early or they start getting a girlfriend early, is that you don't want to get into a relationship, especially the first girl who starts liking you. Because once you're learning this, you're going to get something called beginner's luck, where you start getting more attracted girls are going to start liking you. You were in a life before that sucked and you had no results, and now you're getting results. So you will stick to the first result you get, which is the first woman, and you kind of settle down. Especially if you get stuck in a marriage where you didn't really develop yourself as a more attractive man. You hear horror stories of the girl cheating, taking half of what you have, and it gets really dark and bad. That's where you come up from a frame where now you're going to become more negative when you start the journey, and you could actually go to the darker route where you start hating women as you learn this skill. So you need to learn first what you need to learn to work with what you have, not just jump, right? So learn this journey, become the most attractive version of you, and then you can make a decision from abundance. And also self-reflect. When you get to a point where you're starting to get results, when you start this journey, where am I? Have I broke my heuristic thinking where my first judgment of women was negative, or even the first judgment of myself is like, am I being fake? Because a lot of students, when they start this journey, they feel like they're fake. They're using pickup tactics or routines and they don't feel real. My own reflection was when I started this journey, it's kind of like when it comes to finance and success, right? A lot of people want to be rich. A lot of people want to win the lotto, get Bitcoin and get rich early. But one thing I realized about some of my friends who also achieved success early, either their parents were rich or Bitcoin helped them out. Like not all, but there's obviously outliers who have a good foundation of values, but most of them don't know how to save the money, becomes gambling, and they start using money, the wrong things like drugs. They start paying for women instead of actually attracting women. So it just becomes a dark road where I feel like when you want something too fast, you don't understand the journey of how to be a person who gets those results. If you just become rich, you don't learn how to be rich, right? You don't have the foundation to save money, spend less than you earn, and all this kind of stuff, right? You don't know how to invest. You just become rich. So you don't know how to keep it. It's not consistent. When you lose weight too fast or get this body too fast, you realize that you don't have the habits. You don't have the identity where now when you're stressed out, you overeat or you have cheat days instead of cheat meals, and you just lose your sense of like, wait, I'm this fit guy, but you're never that fit guy. You're not the rich guy. It's just like temporary pleasure. And when it comes to dating, you just don't want to be a guy who knows how to turn it on and turn it off. It's like it should be always on. And that's what we want, right? We want to walk into a room where there's a lot of women and there's a lot of men, but you're the most attractive guy by your presence, not by your physical looks or physical attraction. It's about the way you're being, right? So it's like be, do, have. Behavior is be, do, have. You have to first be it first, do, and then have. But your way of being when you start at a late age, right? Your way of being has already been set, right? So it's better to definitely start early because now you will learn the skill and you understand this dating thing. It's not like you learn the skill and you're going to get all the girls you want. You learn the process. Even like there's a rumor that, this whole seduction people coaches say even the best guys, they only hit 30%, right? They approach 10 girls or something and they solidify a relationship with like 3 girls, right? And this whole thing is a process. It's a skill. Everything you realize, even college, right? If you think about your college degree, think about doctor. That's a big example. A doctor goes to 4 years of school and then undergrad or whatever, and then go to med school. And it's like a 10-year journey pretty much, right? And they don't become a doctor or officially say they're a doctor. They could say maybe I'm a doctor, but they don't say I'm a doctor until they officially graduate. And that takes years. So this whole thing about dating and attraction is like, we think it's like just a thing that we have or don't. But once you realize that you can learn it, it's going to take years for you to eventually get that certificate or graduation. In the end, you have to choose that moment where you're like, I had this. And for me, I had that moment where I remember I got flaked on and me and my friend was like, hey, let's just go out. And I was able to get a date that night because a girl flaked on me. And that moment where I was kind of feeling negative, girls always flake on me, they don't like me. My friend was like, dude, we have this as a skill. Let's just go out and meet other people. Who cares? So the moment I did that and I met someone, I wouldn't say she was better, but it just made me feel knowing that I just always had a choice to have someone I could date. But that gave me that confidence of like, I'm attractive. If I want a girl, I could just go talk to a girl. I could message a girl. I could go online dating. I have the system to always date. So even if I break up, now if I go through a breakup, I just know this is temporary. So I could actually take time off. This is where guys, they just want to meet a girl away right after they break up. But now I have a choice. So you actually become more powerful in choices. Like you have more choices when you actually take time to become attractive. And the earlier you start this, the earlier you kind of create the right habits to just be charismatic, be attractive, be seductive. Just you have this, I don't know, I guess like a freedom of choice, and it's very, very powerful, guys. So start early, start fast, but also start with self-awareness, right? Don't rush into, as soon as you start getting results, don't rush into it, right? Like really reflect, like, is this something who I am? Am I a person who can date any girl I want, but I'm choosing to commit to this girl? Or it's because this is the first thing that I need to prove to myself that I am worthy enough to have a woman in my life. It's like knowing when to start. And I said, start early as possible, especially if you're watching this video, maybe you're hesitating. A lot of guys will have to learn a coach. The coach will help you get there faster. That's why I said speed always wins, right? If you could learn this faster, if you could graduate in 4 years or even 2 years or even 1 year, why wait 10 years learning this on your own? Because there are a lot of resources out there. There's AI now. Now you could Google everything and you could find an AI dating coach. I know how to create an AI GPT dating consultant, but they're never going to ever teach you from a person who went through a real life experience, especially if the coach, like I'm just saying for me, I was a student. I paid for, before all this AI to create stuff, I paid for these boot camps or these like 3-day boot camps where you just go approach a bunch of women. I went through a whole year where I approached at least 5 women, 5 strangers every day to build this confidence. Because if you kind of go away from books, you don't know what their actual experience is. So that's where it gets kind of shady, where has that person actually gone through the grind? It's kind of like learning how to be rich from already a person who's a rich kid, right? Like he already has like a trust fund. So like, yes, he could make better investments. Let's say he did learn how to be rich and he did get rich, in his own way. But if he already has a good starting point, you can't relate to that, especially if your bank account's at 0 and his bank account is at 100 grand or $1 million, right? Real talk. The first decision is, guys, start fast, learn this as a skill, and start reflecting on this journey and crafting that identity and solidifying. And if you're starting late, it's okay. It's not too late. I'm just saying, definitely you have to work harder though, because you have already these set heuristic thinking, set neurons, brain connections that kind of trigger. So if you are starting late, it doesn't mean that don't lose hope, but just you might have to work a little bit harder. And I think that's where a coach definitely will help you. Okay. So when it comes to the next part is you got to know when to stop, because there's a dark side to treating dating as a skill and learning this. For example, usually when a student, like for me, I started at 21. I took my first boot camp where I walked into a room. There was I went to a hotel room. I paid like $5,000. So there's a 40-year-old doctor, there's a 45-year-old computer engineer, and there's a 50-year-old engineer. And I was a 21-year-old college student. I definitely had a hard time because those guys still had that confidence from their work, their career, but I had nothing to be confident in. I was still in college. So I had no money to back me up too. I thought I could pay up this amount of money. I could get any girl to just come towards me if I just say hi. But the first night went brutal for me because I didn't have any set foundations. The first night I actually froze and it was very tough. I actually wanted to quit. The doctor who was there, who was working with me, he actually called me and he talked to me. I don't remember his name, but I still want to thank him because he showed me that, hey, you're so young. He said, you're so young. You're starting this. I wish I started at your age. He was able to instill a confidence in me that I still have a lot of hope. I think sometimes having a lot of time gives you that leeway to like, yo, I got time to do this, right? And I feel like as you get older, that's where you start rushing things and you start making mistakes because you feel like you don't have time. Like a lot of my clients now who are older, they want to rush everything. And that's why, sometimes in my marketing, I say 3 months. And ideally, I could get you dates in 3 months, but to make you just attractive for the rest of your life, where you walk into a room and you just demand all the time. And I'm just telling you the truth, guys. Like, if you really want to do it as fast as possible, this has to be like a full-time job. But a lot of you guys have jobs that you can't just take away from. So that's why I actually had students who took like a whole 2 years off where they focused on game, right? 2 years. They still even took 2 years. Like school, you have to take 4 years. You don't work on other stuff while you're doing 4 years. Some people can, but like when you actually start this, like you have to be all in, learning about evolutionary psychology, right? You learn about science, you learn about human behavior, women behavior, male behavior. And it kind of gets dark where even with your relationship with your parents, you start breaking it down to science. And I remember I started this journey because I got my heart broken. And it makes me kind of push away my emotions, right? It makes me think very logically because I don't want to react to women. I want to respond to women. Emotional moments and deep connections become hard to feel. And most gurus might say, like, that's the best way to do this because now you have the power dynamic. But when I see my parents are my probably true example, my first teachers when it comes to relationships, right? So I would say seeing my parents, my dad didn't know this was a skill. My dad was a virgin before my mom, and he learned how to still seduce my mom to this day, right? And he did his best with what he could. Back in the day, I don't think there were any dating coaches or YouTube videos teaching him how to be attractive. So I think we have to learn something from the past is that a lot of these guys didn't even know dating was a skill. They kind of did best with what they had. So I think in this note, we have more resources now, right? So there's no excuse for you guys to get good at dating. But don't forget that our parents or people in the past, they were able to use emotions to still attract women. So I think there's a balance to this, right? You don't want to just like, go on and go to girl, everything is science, everything's a chess move, everything's a move. So you're just like, man, is this always going to be like this where I always have to be gaming the girl where I feel like the emotions are just never there and I always have to think critically and you just can't enjoy the moment. So this is where it gets a little dangerous, especially as a younger student. They almost become like the rep community. If you see the toxic masculinity, you see like women as transactional, you lose empathy, you always think women just want value, they're just gonna leave you. So always have choices, have side chicks or date multiple girls. So like think of the worst kind of people who abuse this, right? So there's a rumor that sociopaths are actually the best people who learn how to seduce. Like think about the worst case scenario in the movie, Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, right? Like this guy was a narcissist, but he was able to seduce women and do crazy stuff. And like if you look at actual real people who did bad stuff, they were actually really good at seduction because they have no emotions. They don't care about the other person. Like usually people have sympathy, but empathy is something that men have to work on. Actually, they're not wrong books. You should still learn the science of why we have these thoughts, we have these emotions, but you get to a point where like now you're like just focusing on pure like logic and it just like it becomes really bland and everything becomes like a chess move, a strategy. And I think with people, you could go the whole Machiavelli route where you just abuse people, take advantage of people because of their own thing. But I think first, if you get caught, it's really bad. And then second, it just gets really dark, guys. It's like no matter how many women you have, and I had this phase where I did that and I just lost all emotions. I was just using pure science and evolution or psychology. And I wouldn't say I was red pill because I still respect and love women, but it's just like I was lonely. They would leave because I had this issue where I would be intimate with a girl and have a connection, but then once she rejects me, I would still get butthurt. So I was like, I'm not gonna get butthurt anymore. I'm just gonna take away all emotions. And I started to stop feeling. And there's girls who come around who make me feel again, but then they always broke my heart. And I used to blame it on them, but then I realized it's me. It's because when I have something like that, I start my own emotional triggers I have from my mom. I told this is another video where I talk about my relation with my mom, where I wasn't able to heal that. So when the time I actually truly felt emotions for a girl, I always lost her because I became needy and simpy, right? Most guys who get really good at this, I think it's seduction, whatever you want to call it, and learn that skill, they become sociopaths where like everything becomes like a value exchange. It just becomes very transactional relationships. And even though they're not paying for it, but most like even my youngest student, like I remember I taught him when he was 18 actually. He just realized like I'm just gonna get rich because in the end, if I just get rich, it's gonna make everything easier. But then we all know rich people get girls, not all, because I have some rich clients who don't. There's no emotional connection, and you're always just like moving on to the next one. You never learn how to do commitment. So I think if you do get into this thing called seduction game, whatever you want to call it, learn when to stop or also know an endpoint, right? Because if you know the endpoint, you don't have to go all the way. This is where you see like the greats, right? You see Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, right? Like no matter how perfect their skill was when in their sport, their personal lives suck. Like if you see even like John Jones, right? Even Tom Brady got cheated on. Michael Jordan, he never had a great relationship with his wife. He was just so competitive, right? So I understand you guys think to be great at something, you have to like make sacrifices, but we started all this journey in the end. I started this journey because I got my heart broken and I wanted to get my first love back, but I didn't. So then I went down this whole road of like, and even through her, I found out she didn't love me. I loved her only. So I just became bitter. And I realized don't get bitter, get better, right? So everyone is self-interested, okay? We're all in this video game called life, right? And everyone is either you're the player playing the game or everyone else is a non-player NPC, right? But you don't want to just go around hurting them, right? There's to help you out on your journey. They're mentors. And especially the women, right? They can add to that journey of the video game and make it more fun. That's why you play these video games called role-playing games. And you always love when there's a female character and there's a love story, right? Even though it's scripted and stuff, you love video games that have that story, right? God, there's a love story. There's a child involved, the most recent one. Like these storylines are great because you got to learn how to play well with others, right? And you do feel an emotion. I think that's why video games are addicting is because you're playing a video game and you have full control, but yet you get to still play in the storyline of the game, right? So that's how I think you guys should see dating, right? So don't lose sight of that. But then there's those stories from my parents and even on Instagram where like there is true love that exists. Or I think this was like there's a story where a man went into a burning building and saved his girlfriend, but he was all burned like from head to toe and she just left him. But then there's also stories where women don't do that, right? You see stories where women stay loyal back in the day when a man went to war and waited for him for 2 to 3 years. Your energy goes where your focus goes, right? So if you focus always on the negative and when you start reading books, because you do need to become a little bit logical. If you become too emotional, you become a sim now, right? Like you become too lovey-dovey. You're also getting brainwashed by Hollywood about the romantic comedies, right? Take a boombox outside in front of her door and play that. Like that works if she likes you. She doesn't like you, you're stalkerish, right? This is something even me, I had to go through. I went through like a phase where I went more emotional, right? And I went through this whole emotional intelligence seminar and I started confessing how I felt about a girl. Confessions of like, let's say you like a girl. You're not saying because you like the girl, you want to say, I like the girl, I like you because you want to say it back. That's not real confidence. You're saying you like her because you want to say it back. But a real confident man just says, I like you. I don't care if you don't like me or not, but I like you and I'm going to find a way for you to like me. And if you do like me, let's make this work. If you don't, I'm going to find a way if you want me to, right? You don't force it. This is why sociopaths, they're like, I'm going to do whatever I can to get my result. And that's where it gets dangerous and dark, right? So the two most important decisions when you start this journey called attraction, being confident, is when to start. Start early, break old patterns, build the emotional foundation, and when to stop. Don't get stuck in the cold logic. Remember to keep your heart open. So dating is about balance, skill, and soul, and logic and feeling. Learn how to use both, right? Because it's just like, yes, when we eat food, if you want to be super healthy and super ripped and super fit, you could just eat broccoli and chicken. There's ways to enjoy life too, right? So learn how to add a little bit of seasoning the right way, but not the bad seasoning where you have too much MSG or salt. And emotions are like seasoning, right? They make your life taste better. So learn how to use it as a balance, right? Sometimes it's good to eat food with a little bit extra salt. It's okay to have a little sodium, a little bit extra butter to make that food taste extra good. So use emotions as like a seasoning or butter to butter up your life. If you guys want to learn more, just start now. Let's get on a no strings attached coaching call. Let's talk about if I can actually help you. If not, free resources in the link below, in the description below, and just get started. Just get started. And then for those guys who are working with me or is maybe take a break from game and all this logic and this science stuff, especially those red pill guys, and maybe go be a monk. I know I can't believe I'm saying this, but go meditate, maybe go the spiritual route and just try to balance it. Because if you don't balance these two guys, like usually I see the guys who go full emotional route, they become like monks or spiritual and they're not even monks. They just like feel like they could just meditate and manifest women. right? So there's that extreme end. And there's the other end where guys who go too deep into this, they just become actually, they're really lonely. They're just like getting as much intercourse as possible. And they just, in the end, don't have any connections. And if they pass away, none of these people will care because they know they were just used as objects of desire and just a value exchange, right? Personally, guys, for me, this journey has been very interesting. Like I told you, I wanted to stop early, right? But it got to a point where, I went through a phase where I stopped believing in love. And it took me many years to come back to it. And the people who made me realize that love still exists was my parents, because I'm pretty sure they're not doing anything physical. I don't want to think about it, but I'm pretty sure like my dad did not learn this as a skill, and he just used what he had in the moment to make the best out of it. I don't know if my dad will be the same dad he is, but I do know their love story is a love story, right? Because they're still together, they still sleep in the same bed, and like they're still together, right? So I feel like energy goes where your focus goes. So maybe if you want love, focus on getting love, but don't not use the resources out there to do it the right way and to be attracted at the same time, because you guys still take care of yourself too. All right. So I hope that helps, guys. Like I said, book a call with me. Let's see if I can help you. Captain Daniel out.